She said it's her space and I'm not allowed it. And I said there was never an official transfer of command. That's a very specific thing in the military.
Once the first seed germinates, this is my
It's been claimed.
flower cottage.
Is that a law of flower farming?
Yes.
The first seedling you grow is territory
It's an
claimed.
ordinance. It's a marital ordinance.
Marital ordinance.
Hi everyone, Alex and Eric at Corumdale Farm. We thought that this would be great. The kids are in the house doing a little movie night and we have some time here to come out to the flower cottage and film a 2023 plan video. So a couple weeks ago in January, we filmed a video, or maybe the very end of December technically, we filmed a video of like looking back on our first year flower farming. All that we accomplished, what we learned, what we now know better going into this next year. So we did a great review. I'll link it in the description. Really helpful to sit down and think through everything that we accomplished and things that went well, things that did not go so well. And so now I think it would be helpful to look forward to 2023. And we were talking about the best way to kind of organize those thoughts. And I think the best way would be to kind of go around the property for what we have planned for all of those different spaces. And that's kind of how the property is coming together as well. There are very clear zones throughout the property and we have big plans for all of them. So I thought we'd talk about them.
All right.
So where do you want to start on
Let's
the property? Where should we start? What makes the most sense?
Well, I mean, the draw of the channel has been focused on the raised garden. So how is the raised garden going to change this year?
One thing that's exciting is, so we moved to Oklahoma last year in March. The raised garden was built in April and I planted it out in the last week of April. And so because of that timing, I missed the whole spring season. I really only planted summer annuals for flowers and vegetables and a couple perennials and got to experience that. So this is the first year where the garden will have tons of things growing in the spring before the summer season starts. So right now, what would you guess? 60%, maybe even 70, no, probably 60% of the garden is currently filled either with bulbs or overwintering flowers and some vegetables. We've got the strawberries and then also all the garlic that's in. So I'm really looking forward to having a spring garden. And then I've been working kind of during nap time to think through how I'm gonna flip the space. So like once all the tulips, there's 3,000 tulips planted in the raised garden right now. When all the tulips get pulled out, the ranunculus are spent, the spring flowers are kind of winding down and going to seed, how I'm going to change it into a summer garden.
I love how you keep calling it nap time.
What?
As if that's a universal.
Well, I don't know.
We have one kid clinging to the nap. He takes a hot second, 30-minute nap now, and then yells at us to come get him.
Mandated 1 to 3 p.m. quiet time in the house. But I'll admit, I'm not 100% settled on my summer garden plans. The reason being, last year I grew a ton of vegetables in the raised garden space. We had 2 huge beds of tomatoes, we had 2 beds of peppers, we had 2 beds of cucumbers, and all of that, we'll talk about this more in detail, but all of that's going out into the field this year. So I have a lot of extra space that I didn't have last year, and I'm not just gonna grow. It's good, but I'm trying to think.
Don't overplant it.
No, I'm not going to overplant it, but I want to think long term. Do I view the raised garden as like a high turnover space where every year things are coming out and I'm just putting new annuals in every year? Or do I want to start making the space more perennialized and more aesthetically enjoyable for pollinators and herbs and stuff that are perennials or that reseed? And so then each year we're not removing as much debris, refilling, starting seeds and planting, and it starts to become more of like a curated design space that matures year after year versus like I'm gonna take it like we did in October. I'm gonna take it all out, turn it all over, come up with like a brand new plan the next year versus perennials, I guess. When you do perennials, you can like layer them and then you can start getting that like English cottage garden effect with just like different heights and layers and textures, and they cycle in bloom spring and summer and then a fall flush, and it's just a lot of different interest all the time. Or do I want it to be more like I did this first year where it's like cucumber bed, pepper bed, strawberry bed, and that's more like
Why not both?
uniform. Yeah, like
Maybe the outside, perennialize it, and the interior becomes more of
of
your
a
option.
rotation. Yeah, because I do
Because
view
then you can layer along the walls for artistic, and
For
then you
height.
still, I mean, because you'd want both. You would still want to grow some veggies in there.
that's true. I shouldn't like fully
Successful veggies,
commit. Yeah, right.
not not pumpkins.
No pumpkins. Never again pumpkins.
Probably not zucchini. Although you said you wanted to try them
I'm gonna try zucchini one more time in
under the
hoops.
some sort of cover. That's a space you'd want some of both. I think you'd want to minimize the amount of turnover every single year because it's a large garden.
It's a large garden. It's a lot of seed. It's a lot of space, and that's great. I like having all of that space. Yeah, but I do view the raised garden as like a really wonderful trial space because in a raised garden, you have the best soil. You're able to hand water it and really baby it, give it lots of attention. And so, especially last year and as well as this coming year, I am going to be growing a lot of new to me things where I don't want to commit a full field row to this particular flower or this particular vegetable and have the potential to have a much bigger loss if things go wrong as I'm learning, versus in the raised garden, it's like, well, I have a 3x6 box. Let's try to grow this flower. Like the stalk, yay, show and tell. The stalk seeds that I'm growing, I've never grown stalk before, but all of these babies are going to go into the raised bed under a hoop.
Give them some exercise.
I know, so they can get strong roots.
Give them some exercise, like a little wind.
Not your hands are really.
No, that's a gentle.
Your hand's like a tornado.
It's a gentle.
My
It's an
hand is-
F1 tornado.
My hand's an F1 tornado.
You're a director.
So this is an example. I wouldn't want to put a full new to me flower out in our 30-foot field row because I'd be embarrassed of losing all this. No, you've lost. You're
No.
not allowed to touch them.
You can't embarrass me on camera.
Like I won't tell you what just happened before.
There was
filming.
an accident because she literally hid them.
I was not hiding them. They need darkness to germinate, and you didn't know they were under there.
I was grabbing a lid off the shelf, and it turns out she had put seeds under it.
Pansies. Just
What person would have assumed
Whatever.
there were a seed
I
under
forgive
there?
you. I forgive you. It's the first death of the season.
Watch, they're all going to germinate, and you're just going to
like
be...
100% germ and be like, new technique. Flip them upside down.
Pick them off the floor,
Just stuff them back.
mush them together, and they're ready to go.
That's perfect. So that's the raised garden.
Well, there's a couple other things in the raised garden.
okay, what?
So I am going to be putting drip irrigation
okay.
around the perimeter.
That was a lesson learned. Well, a lesson learned, or like a reality experience.
Something to help
We had to hand water
labor.
a lot, and that was pretty
Every
exhausting.
night that was 45 minutes to an hour, because when we hit drought, it's
It was
every
every
night.
day, yeah. So we're going to add drip, so that should cut down in some of my watering. We have 2 retractable hoses on either side, and so it's actually very convenient. It's just, it was so time consuming in July, August, and September when we got no rain that it'd be nice to at least cut back a percentage.
You're
chunk
talking
of
about
that.
a garden the size of a small home, 1,500 square feet.
1,500 square. I love the process of watering, and because then I get to look at all the plants and blah blah blah. But it took so long that it was kind of like we weren't as able to just like sit and enjoy in the garden all together and stuff with the kids, because it was like I have to water.
And we did have an
work on that.
extraordinary record-breaking year for heat and drought.
And drought,
so.
yeah. So that's the raised garden. So all to say is we get to experience a spring season in the raised garden for the first time this year, which is wonderful. I cannot wait, because that's where some of the first color on the property is going to be with the tulips and daffodils and such. And then the summer garden, I think, will be really interesting to experiment, heading in the direction of adding more perennials and more of a design element rather than just more like monocropped boxes, which is what I did this first year. So
Are you
fun.
going to do any herb growing in there?
Yeah, that's what I have planned. I'm going to start them from seed to save money, so they're probably going to go in here.
Well, I should take that back, because officially I learned herbs. There's only 2 classes of plants.
What?
Herbs and trees. And flowers are an herb.
Oh,
Did you know that?
who is this expert?
That's the scientific groupings.
They were like, we've only got 2 options.
That's it. It's an herb or a tree. That is the official...
So
What is
what's
it,
a shrub?
genus?
So what's a shrub?
It's a tree. That's part of the tree class.
It's like a squat tree.
Yeah, well, shrubs and trees they're woody plants. It's woody plants first.
Then what's a peony?
It's a herb.
But it's a shrub.
It's not a shrub. It's not a woody stalk. Sciencing.
Okay.
So when I say herbs, I think of what most people would think of
culinary uses for things. Yes, I have stuff planned. Off the top of my head, I'm going to totally miss. But I mean, I have like chamomile and mountain mint and bee balm and calendula. So that's the raised
play
garden.
Space.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's like super enjoyable.
We don't yet know its long-term vision.
Yeah.
It's big enough that you have to figure out.
I don't even know if I told you I did this. So
oh boy.
Here we go.
Here we go.
But I bought more roses that are going to go in the raised bed, and I'm going to put a rose in each corner of the raised bed, because what I learned is when I planted dahlias back there, it was really hard to like reach into that far of a diagonal into the corner for that I like continually needed to do, and I kind of needed to do that with the dahlias, whether I was like pinching it or cutting it, cutting stems and whatnot. So I think if I put roses there, that kind of like cuts the corner off, and I can just water them and they can perennialize and get big and kind of fill that corner. I'm really excited. Roses don't
if the morning glory doesn't
return from the dead, and it's just like 1,000 sprouts. It's the morning glory raised garden.
Yeah, that's what it's gonna be.
Just like get drowned by the morning glory vines.
Just gonna twirl and choke out your precious little roses.
Yeah, my mom was right there. Listen to your mom with gardening if she knows what she's doing. But I think that'd be really pretty. Roses don't love Oklahoma, but maybe with some like fluffy raised garden soil, drip irrigation, we can make them happy. So we have the North Perennial Garden, the South Perennial Garden. The North Perennial Garden was created in May of last year. It was kind of like our working space when we were building the raised garden. So the compost pile was there. A lot of like Eric's, where we painted and like did a bunch of stuff there. And Eric had a great idea of tilling it up and creating like a fire pit gravel seating area and then a perennial space next to it. And a friend of mine had a bunch of perennials that she didn't want anymore, because it's crazy. I don't know who would want these things, but she's like, do you want anything? Yes, please, free plants. So we went, and my dad helped me. We dug up tons of plants. We planted them in the perennial garden, and then since then I've been adding to them as I started stuff from seed, or even got more for free plants. I got free plants from another friend. This space was heavily planted with spring perennials, and so I didn't get a ton of blooms because of the transplant time. So I'm highly anticipating just an explosion of color in April, May, and June, because we have peonies and irises and lilies and surprise lilies, and I've got a hibiscus, I've got a rose of Sharon in there. And then I took a wildflower mix in October and threw it out in both the perennial gardens, and I got a like perfect germination, which is ironic because like you try to start stuff inside and you're like hyper babying them and trying to get them to grow, then you just like throw seed out and it goes perfectly well, and that's what happened. So I anticipate like larkspur and bachelor buttons and all of that stuff to be growing in that space as well. But the North Perennial Garden, I would say, is about 80% filled. So I am starting a ton of perennials behind me, and the plan is that some of these will go into those gaps on the north side. Also, filling it helps with the Bermuda grass, because the more I fill with plants and their canopy shades out, the less like big chunks of grass that can grow. And that was kind of our problem towards the end of the season, is in the empty spaces the Bermuda got going. So I'm gonna plan is to maximize the north perennial space, and to do so with stuff that also blooms in the summer, because I don't want to just create a spring garden. You know, as the peonies are winding down, I've got something else coming up behind it. So like echinacea and penstemon and agastache. What else?
Agastache.
Yeah, some yarrow, more yarrow. Well, okay. So in the south garden, when did we do this? We put down...
It was late.
Yeah, we put down the silage tarp maybe at the end of August into September. We put the tarp down, and it sat for a solid probably 6 weeks, 5 weeks in like hot September sun. So it got good solarization, starved the Bermuda grass of light, pulled it up, we tilled it, and then Eric took the bucket loader on the tractor and scraped down probably 6 inches
a lot
off the top and dumped it in kind of our like debris area. And then we brought in fresh soil. No, that's not going to get rid of all the Bermuda grass, but any effort is working in the right direction. So hopefully
It's gone.
Okay. So we did that, and then we transplanted all of the yarrow I planted in the flower farm last year. We transplanted it into this perennial space because that field just got shut down. And I worked really hard on that yarrow, and I didn't get a ton of stems that first year because it's a perennial, and I knew that the second year is when I would get the plants that are like this tall with the great flowers to cut, and so I didn't want to have to start over. So my dad, we tend to time things when my parents are here to help with labor, but we dug up the yarrow and transplanted it into the South Perennial Garden, and I would estimate 45 yarrow probably went in there. And then I added some glads, garden phlox, more peonies, gaillardia. So I added all of that, and then again I casted some of that seed, so there'll be larkspur and bachelor buttons that come up, and then probably some like echinacea, gaillardia, Mexican hat, kind of the stuff that you get in those wildflower mixes. So that space, I would say, is almost 100% full. The raised garden, like Eric said, is the play area, and then the North and South Perennial Gardens I'm really excited to have. So those spaces are just really beautiful. We love that you can see them from the road. We love that you had the idea to create the fire pit, and we can just sit there and enjoy it with the kids. And I think it's almost complete. And now it's like entering now into like the maturity phase of like getting fuller and older.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see this year.
I'm already seeing irises like starting to poke through, and I bet you the peonies start here pretty soon. So I really am excited about the perennial spaces to enter in year 2. Because what's the adage with perennials? It's like sleep, creep, leap. So this year will be a creep year, which means like we will like see its growth and get going and kind of like coming to be. So that I guess maybe in 2024 it'll be like the real maximizing.
Pretty well done last year.
Yeah, well, they were big root balls that we trimmed.
What are we going to see with our peonies that we planted this year? We still need to do another row.
Oh yeah, so the peonies.
When are we doing those, by the way?
Good question. So in end of November, we planted 2 rows of peonies along our west side fence line, and we have enough peonies for almost a 3rd row. Right now the peonies are in crates. We filmed a video about that, of how we were going to overwinter the peonies until we could get them in ground. So it's definitely a spring project.
You have them
yeah, they're outside. Out there. So in March, that's definitely would be a good timing before they like really start waking up to get them planted if we have time. But peony row, once that 3rd row is in, is as much as that space can take, and we are going to run drip to them. So again, another automation to save time. It is in full max sun. We'll give enough water and just be really patient, and in a couple years, May will be incredible here with that many peonies going.
But we'll see something coming up this year.
Yeah, if you go and look, you kind of like dig open the little landscape things, you can see the eyes starting to come up. Which means they're alive.
So we're not going for the instant win. We're going for the long-term, lower cost investment.
Yeah, the peonies did not cost that much.
You just have to wait.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, you could buy peonies that by the 2nd year, you could probably cut flowers. If you went with the more like 3 to 5 eyes on your peony root. And we went much cheaper with 1 or 2 eyes. So I think probably 3 years is when we'll really see it looking 25. Yeah. And I mean, that's just the choices you have to make, on how much, like where you want to invest money and where you would rather just be patient. And for me, because I have probably 25, 30 peonies that are mature big root balls in the North and South Perennial Garden, I wanted to choose the smaller investment for peony row because I'll have lots of peonies to enjoy until then while we're waiting. It wasn't like I had no peonies and now I have like an agonizing 3-year wait. It's like I do have a ton of mature peonies to enjoy and even cut on to sell or just enjoy myself because they tend to bloom around my birthday in May while we wait for the lower investment peonies to get going.
So I'm in charge of trees moving forward, so I've got to learn all their names, types, varieties.
Well, you already told us there are only 2 groups of plants, so trees.
Genus, family, species. Well, there's lots of speciation in trees.
I have the herbs, you have the trees. Yeah. There it is.
Herb, master, woody stem.
The only woody stems.
So I placed an order for more trees. So we're reading a book, How to Grow a Little Fruit Tree.
Yeah, grow a little fruit tree.
Grow a little fruit tree.
Yeah,
it has a very, very dramatic recommendation for how to do your initial prune in order to ensure...
It's shocking and traumatizing.
Yeah, ensure that the tree you have a fruit tree, does not grow to a size that's unmanageable. And we're not trying to be a fruit farm, but even orchard people, if they embrace this, they end up enjoying it because you're trying to produce a tree that you can manage without.
Well, when you go to U-Pick orchards, you're not going to places that have 25-foot apple trees. Like, they've pruned them to be picked by people.
Yeah, that's true. I'm trying to even think. I mean, they're usually not quite as short as this book recommends.
And they're a little more gangly, but...
They're more like 10, 12 footers.
Yeah. But if you didn't do anything, they would go to 20 feet, so...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm deep diving and learning the arborist duties, and also we're going to be obviously experimenting here in Oklahoma with what does well and what doesn't, and how much management it takes. So but because...
Stay tuned.
Because this state is not like a fruit tree natural habitat.
No, it's not like the Northeast and Midwest.
It takes more management, which is all the more reason why you want to keep the trees compact.
That's a good point, because if they get too big and we have such high pest pressure, you end up not being able to actually treat the tree, and then it just becomes a trash tree.
Right, pest in trees, and then too much fruit. So we're trying to grow fruit trees that are for our family, and then when these are 10-year investments that well, they're 20-year investments, so when they have grandkids and they can come and they can...
Yeah, and neighbors.
We're trying to embrace, certain aspects that I think have been lost generation to generation in terms of production, and that's, the fact that when you plant a tree, it's a long wait. There's going to be some new trees planted, and we did a explainer video on pruning, but we actually didn't do all the trees because we ran out of time.
Because of that non-existent nap.
But Alex got a great spray in, an initial copper fungicide.
That was important.
Which we'll have to do that a couple times to just help offset disease spreading, because cedar rust is a big deal in apple trees.
Cedar rust, and then just like smothering any eggs that were laid to overwinter.
Right. There's a lot of bagworms and
other bagworms. Yeah,
there'll be other stuff that I'll have to learn. I mean, because of the curse of the fall, managing all these trees takes time and attention. So I'm excited about it. It's stuff I've never done before, but there's a lot of great advice out there, and this book seems like it has some really, really good points.
I'm excited to hear what you're
But it's going to be pretty traumatic, so stay tuned for that video, because you basically plant a tree.
You're going to be yelling at your screen.
That's a stick. So we got four new trees coming in, 2 peach, 2 plums. We're going to try the espalier. On a couple of them. You have to put a picture
on the screen of our goal.
It's such a cool concept.
Yeah.
We don't know where we're going to put the peaches, but
we'll figure it out. Yeah.
They're good peaches here. So I researched the ones that will work well for Oklahoma. So we'll obviously get into that.
Yeah, we'll explain the varieties we chose and stuff. Yeah.
Doing the deep research on, there's just so many varieties.
They're coming in a couple weeks though, so that'll be
so they're bare root, which is the most effective way to buy, especially with this particular technique. You just don't need to pay the premium
for a bigger tree.
For a bigger tree, because they have to deal with the soil and all that. So this is just when they're dormant, you get them and you put them in the ground right away. So we're going to add more trees, bring our total up to, how many fruit trees would that put us at?
We have 8 now.
So it'll be another 4, so 12 trees.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking of doing some grapes somewhere this year. University of Arkansas has pioneered a few grapes that should work well in our region, that are cold hardy and highly disease resistant.
That'd be cool.
So there's going to be some of those, but we don't yet know where to put them. So I'm going to try to start taking over some of the woody things, and they're all multi-year payoffs, so this will be a long journey. So hopefully we'll be able to, in a few years,
that'll be really
with
fun.
Grapes, it's usually year 3 or 4, just like a fruit tree, where it's up and it's on the trellising.
That's gonna be cool.
And you're getting clusters off of them. So I want to grow a couple table grapes, 2 or 3 should be enough to feed a family.
We've
Maybe we'll get 4 because we are a bigger family than your
got
average
great
size.
monsters in the family.
So maybe I'll get. They're so cheap to start. They're like $12 each.
Yeah, just so many things about time and maintenance.
As long as you start small and you have patience, you can slowly get this stuff.
And then we're also going to add to our blackberry grove.
Yeah, got a 6-pack of blackberries.
And we have 4 out there now, so we'll be able to fill.
Yeah, these are going to be. I think they're. How do you pronounce it? The Ouach Wichita. I think it's Wichita, which are again another University of Arkansas.
I mean,
they're disease resistant to this area. There's so many fruits to grow. I think if we could figure out grapes and have these fruit trees producing in a few years, and blackberries,
and then
that's a good amount.
The spring blossom worth it too. Just aesthetically, it's so pretty in March and April.
Right.
With the blossoms.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to
make pollinators and stuff.
Keeping them all under 8 feet, as the goal. So that's the recommendation for all trees.
With your reach, you're at the top.
That's the goal for almost all fruit trees. Whenever you read about them, they say keep them under 8 feet. So then we should wander over to
like the big area.
Well, the fields.
Yeah. Well, that's the big.
So let's try to move through those pretty quick.
Okay. So we're moving. We decided at the end of last season, the flower farm fields were behind our house. That's where we started. And we decided at the end of the year, we wanted to move them. We wanted to move them for several reasons. One of the big reasons for me is everyone just like lights up when you tell them that you have a flower farm and flowers you buy to look at and enjoy. And we had put them behind our house where no one could actually see them. They could just see the flowers that came from them at the roadside stand. And we have a whole section to the right of the main front yard of our house that is along our road. And we thought, well, let's put the flower fields there, because then essentially you have all the time advertising of people that don't know about you, that are like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? Oh my gosh, what is that? Oh my gosh, I want to stop and look at them. I want flowers. And so there's that. Another reason is if this is going to be a longer term decision venture of ours, it would be better for our family if the whole back part of the property that's more private was completely open for our kids, and they had a big open field to play and throw the football, ride their bikes, and do stuff privately behind the house. And then the farm and all of that were in the front. It seemed like that was just a better layout. And so we're moving to the front, and we had one flower field that was 30 by 6 last year. This year we're going to have 2 of about that size. And then we're going to have a third field that maybe is a bit smaller in its dimensions, but that is where we're going to have a full row of tomatoes that Eric's going to help manage and grow on cattle panels. And then we're going to have half a row of my peppers and half a row of my climbing cucumbers on panels. And then we're going to have a row of melons, cantaloupe. Were like incredible here. Super low disease, super low pest pressure. Cantaloupes were delicious. The kids loved them. I still have some saved in the freezer. It was such a big win. So we're going to do about half cantaloupe, half watermelon. So that's 3 rows. And then 4 rows for our sunflowers. And I'm planning to succession plant a couple hundred every week throughout the whole season, and the successions will go in that section, so like a block of sunflowers. So yeah, 3 big fields. So we're going from 1 to 3.
Yeah, we're going to work on, or you're going to work on, well, you may not grow it all. We're trying to get basically quadruple the amount of area from what we had last year. We're going to try to work on that.
I'm getting rid of the pumpkins.
It'll eventually be probably just 2 fields, because the reason we're calling it 2 fields is right down the middle of our backyard is the water main.
No long hose run from the house.
So it'll be super convenient to tap into that. So it's actually, I feel like it's a God thing, because we don't have to run water hundreds of feet. I can literally dig straight down, tap into the water main, our water main. It's not like the city's water main. The water meter's up by the road, and I'm going to put in probably 3 kind of yard hydrants. Yeah, I mean, just tapping water right there in the middle. So there's going to be, so in time we're going to end up with a field on the east side of that that's going to be probably about 50 foot rows by 60 foot. So it's almost going to be a square.
Almost a square. Okay.
And then on the other side, it won't quite be that
it's not
perfect, because we have to kind of angle part of it to fit in, but it'll be largely like 50 by 40.
That's what we're working towards.
So it'll be about 4,000 square feet. And I think that's as much as you'll be able to manage and sell from without.
Yeah, until the kids get older and can legitimately help. So that I would say is the biggest change going into this year, is moving the flower farm location and then tripling the growing amount. And I'm really excited about that. I'm almost finalized my row plans. We'll do a video about that where I tell you what all I'm going to plant and when and all that fun stuff. I like that. I like looking at all the plants and the seeds and whatnot. But we'll add some more compost.
There's going to be a lot more amendments and cover cropping and stuff that we're going to really try to work on, basically turning 4,000 square feet into really premium
I'm excited.
Planting area.
Yeah, and over the couple years of doing that, it's going to be great. So that's the big changes. We'll do some videos about that. Very excited about that. So it's a little bit of like maintenance, do a little bit of expanding elsewhere, and then the fields, it's like the big new thing. And I'm also excited to see feedback from customers and just people in Claremore that are starting to know our house, the house with the blue raised garden. And then it's like, you think it's just the raised garden that's cool? Like, here's all these flowers we're doing this year.
Good, good, how would you call it? Curb
appeal?
Different curb appeal, because people will be like, I would never want that to buy it. But curb appeal for the sake of.
But when you're asking people to come to you to buy your product, if we make
they see the flowers right from the road.
It's like worth it. It's like I get to see everything and it's a fun experience versus like you pick up flowers from a boutique or a grocery store or something, you're like disconnected from the farm experience. So some big changes, some continuing to expand in other areas. Did we forget any places that we're going to cultivate or add to the property?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want more perennial gardens. We have long-term plans for what, we're going to go into probably some long-term vision in another video about that. For the land to turn it into, the goal of our land is not to just be a cut flower farm and be a purely agricultural use. It's like that's
and purely how many stems can we sell from the property. That's
so it's not trying to be a purely high efficiency.
It's not commercial.
Because I mean, like the bigger farms, like 2 acres would be. I mean, even if we just planted out that whole acre, the east of our property would be an incredible amount of flowers, and I think we'll eventually be growing a lot.
Yeah.
In that side, but we're talking about lots of other plants. We're really trying to build a garden.
Yeah, more like a
place that we want to be.
Permaculture, aesthetically beautiful.
Yeah,
all the things.
That's like a sneak peek. Is like we want to build different spaces with different purposes. So I think we'll, some pathing and some stuff I need to do to. I'm just saying, like we have to frame those in.
Yeah.
And that means like that will help us figure out where else to plant. More permanent spaces.
But I will add here at the end is like, yes, we're doing a lot, but I also think, at least in my mind, you can tell me if you disagree, I do feel like we're trying to slow creep and plot a bit more and not jump and do like all the things that are in my head right away so that we can do them successfully as we expand versus you can plant a ton of things, but then like, will they live and not be destroyed? And are they put in the right spot? And just so not getting too far ahead of ourselves and overwhelm ourselves with the amount of work.
Yeah, we're not trying to plant an acre.
Yeah.
But like, the counter is like, granted it's only probably about 2-3 months that the grass really grows vigorously in the summer, but it's a whole day
of
mowing 2.5 acres of grass and trimming and
Saturday morning I'm like, see you in
I get
4
up
hours.
at 8 o'clock and I make it to noon and I'm like 50% done. And that's with a 60-inch tractor mower moving at 9 miles an hour.
So we're on an anti-grass.
So I was like, I don't really want to spend my Saturdays just growing a field that we don't live in.
But like tending other things.
Like this isn't like Field of Dreams. Like I'm not building a baseball diamond out there.
Not on that grass.
My point being that, yes, we're going to have some more perennial garden spaces. We just have to figure out where. We have a blank slate.
Yeah, it doesn't do us any good doing something quickly, realizing it was stupid, and then having to move it again. Because we had that in like a smaller scale this year with some stuff, and it's like just do better to observe and move a little slower for some.
It's very you have to live in a space to understand how kind of modify it.
Especially for perennials. I mean, that's the nice thing about annuals. Like with that field, it's like we planted all annuals. Like it's done. We'll reseed it and get it back to normal, and like that's it. But if you do perennials, like that's a lot of holes to redig and refill in. Like it's more labor. So thanks for watching. We have some wonderful plans for 2023. Subscribe if you haven't already, or come back for future videos to watch and see if we actually execute all that we just dreamed and talked about. That's the thing about YouTube, is if you say you're gonna do it and you're recording things.
We're committed now.
We can see if you actually do it. We can't hide things.
We have a contract with the public.
They have seen what our plans are, so we have to do it now. Can we do it? Will we do it?
I mean, I feel like we're going to do less this year than we did in our first year.
Okay.
So.
We'll probably come up with more plans.
Yeah, probably. I got a tractor, so I want to push dirt around.
And with that, bye.